What's the greatest love story you've ever seen? Titanic, The Notebook, La La Land, Her? These films stay with us not because the love was perfect, but because it wasn't, because it hurt, because someone left, because the timing was wrong, because real love doesn't always end up in happily ever after. We cry not just at the kiss, but at the distance, the betrayal, the what could have been. Some of the best romances ever told are about love triangles, about impossible choices, about never getting the person back. But what if I told you that the blueprint for all of this, every tragic love story you've ever cried over, started in the last place you'd expect, the Soviet Union? In 1957, a black and white film came out that quietly redefined what love could look like on screen. No heroes, no glossy soundtrack, just war, loss, and a girl who kept waiting long after it was too late. This is How the Cranes Are Flying Changed Romance Forever. In 1957, in a Soviet Union still scarred by the Second World War, filmmaker Mikhail Kalatozov released something almost impossible, a love story with no heroes and no propaganda. The Cranes Are Flying, shot by the visionary cinematographer Sergei Urashevsky, broke every rule. It moved like no movie had moved before. It looked at war not through banners and speeches, but through the trembling hands of two lovers separated by fate. At a time when cinema told us to be brave and strong, this film dared to show how fragile we really are, with a camera that feels just as alive as the main characters. But I knew I couldn't do this alone, and that's why I reached out to a longtime friend of mine, someone who not only loves cinema, but grew up surrounded by the legacy of Soviet filmmaking itself. Boris and Veronica are young in love and sure that nothing can touch them. They watch the cranes fly over Moscow at sunrise and make a simple promise to one another, to stay together no matter what. But when Germany invades the Soviet Union, Boris volunteers to go and fight. Before he leaves, he hides a love letter inside a stuffed squirrel toy for Veronica's birthday, a small piece of himself to hold on to. She rushes to find him, but it's too late. He's already gone. From there, everything unravels. Veronica loses her parents in a bombing. She moves in with Boris's family and tries to stay strong, but during an air raid, Boris's cousin Mark assaults her, and out of shame and loneliness, she ends up marrying him, even though she's still waiting for Boris deep down. Meanwhile, out on the front line, we don't see Boris much, but we know he never lets go of her, showing her picture to all of his comrades. On a mission to save another soldier, he's shot, and in his final moments, he dreams of the wedding and future with Veronica that will never happen. Back home, Veronica is poisoned by guilt, loneliness, and grief. Losing Boris, betraying herself, and living in a broken world almost destroys her. Although Veronica has been told that Boris is dead, she doesn't really believe it deep down. And when the war finally ends, Veronica runs through the crowd with flowers in her hand to greet the returning soldiers, searching for Boris. Maybe he's out there. Maybe she can still keep their promise. Veronica is looking at every single soldier and finally sees one she recognizes, Stepan, an old friend of Boris, and when she greets him, he hands her the photo of her that Boris kept in his jacket, and then she knows. She looks up. The cranes are flying over Moscow once again.
My name is Andrei Kiroshev. I'm a film student in Kazakhstan. I'm studying cinematography of Russia, of the Soviet Union. The cranes are flying, or Letят журавли, how they sound in Russian. This is one of the most important war films of the Soviet period. They presented an absolutely new look at the theme of the war. The film was made by the veterans of the Soviet cinematography. These films were very influential, not only for their Russian cinematography, for the cinema language, how directors could express the feelings of the characters through the image and through the audio, but also for the world. Yes, it's still mentioned in a modern context of cinema history, and it's one of the most important films about the war.
But why was this film so revolutionary technically? First, the camera itself became a character. Sergei Urashevsky didn't frame the action like a spectator, he threw you right into it. Running down the streets, stumbling through bombed buildings and brushing past crowds, the camera was handheld, wild and emotional, and this was decades before that became standard. Wide-angle lenses distorted the space around the characters, leaving the rooms to feel huge, the streets to feel endless. This wasn't realism, this was emotional realism. The world looked exactly how the characters felt. The lighting too flipped Soviet cinema on its head. Instead of clean, flat frames, Urashevsky went full chiaroscuro, harsh shadows cutting through blinding light. It made every frame unstable, shifting, and alive. And then there was the editing. Scenes would slam between slow, dreamlike visions and urgent, chaotic movements. In Boris's final moments, for example, the frame rate drops, the images stutter, blur, his death creeping in slowly, like memory breaking apart. At a time when movies were supposed to be polished, predictable, and controlled, The Cranes Are Flying made cinema feel messy, broken, raw, and more human than ever before.
It's more poetic, it's more about the feeling of a dying man. And if we speak about the influence of this scene, we may see Dead Man by Jim Jarmusch that has like an exactly same scene with crowns of the trees. Camera, of course, is very important.
All of this meant something pretty incredible happened. A black and white Soviet film about love, war and heartbreak won the Palme d'Or at the Cannes Film Festival. And it wasn't just rare for a Soviet film to win, it was pretty much unthinkable. The West barely ever saw Soviet movies at that time, and when they did, it was usually stiff propaganda. But this was different, and it stunned the world. It showed a kind of vulnerability, tenderness and rawness that audiences weren't expecting, especially from behind the Iron Curtain. And it was about real people, real heartbreak and real mistakes.
Картина вообще была обругана во всех центральных газетах России и Советского Союза. Она обманом попала во Францию, и после невероятного резонанса и успеха на Западе она действительно уже шла по всей стране.
This energy exploded into the French New Wave. Films like The 400 Blows, Breathless, and Cleo from 5 to 7 carried the DNA of The Cranes Are Flying inside them. The emotional realism, the handheld chaos, and the love for broken, complicated characters. And even today, that spirit is still alive, in every romance that feels raw instead of cheesy, in every movie that lets love be messy and imperfect. The Cranes Are Flying didn't just win awards, it quietly rewired what cinema could be, forever. And even today you can feel its DNA in how modern love stories are told, promises that might never be fulfilled. This was not just a war film, and it wasn't just a love story. It's a whole new way of seeing the world. After everything Veronica goes through, the love, the separation, the guilt and the survival, the war finally ends. Soldiers come home and Moscow is filled with celebration, and Veronica stands there alone, and still believing in a promise they made on a bridge years ago when the cranes first flew over their head. But Boris doesn't come back, he is gone. And in one of the most heartbreaking, beautiful moments in film history, Veronica, instead of collapsing, starts handing out her flowers to other families, to soldiers who did make it home. She gives her love away, because she has nowhere else to put it. And then, just like at the start of the movie, the cranes fly over Moscow once more. But everything is different now. The cranes aren't just a symbol of hope anymore, they're a symbol of the lives that were lost, the promises that weren't kept, and the innocence that might never return.
Totally, it's a great thing. The war finally finished. We won, and so on. People returning to their families from the war, they reunite again. But for the main actress, it's a tragedy because she understands she cannot share this happy moments with the people who meet their close ones.
Nearly 70 years later, this film still hits like a freight train, because it's not just about the Second World War. It's about love that doesn't get a happy ending, and it's about promises we can't keep, about surviving even when everything you were living for is gone. It showed that cinema doesn't have to be about heroes and victories, it could be about doubt and guilt, about small, invisible wars happening inside people's hearts. And that's why it feels so modern and so alive, because no matter what era you're living in, there's always something human about holding out hope, even when you already know deep down that it's gone. When Veronica looks up and sees the cranes flying again, she's not remembering Boris, she's remembering everyone who never got to come home. And somehow, even through all the heartbreak, the film leaves you with something incredibly rare, a feeling that life will go on, that we carry love forward even when it hurts, that beauty and sadness can exist in the same sky.
Despite the years since the movies were released, they're still very innovative. It's a fundament not only for the next movies in the 60s and 70s, but also for the modern movies that talk about love and develop the complexity of the main characters, of their questioning, of their doubt. This is why this film is very important, not only for the Soviet cinematography, but for the worldwide cinematography as well.
As a final note, I really want to emphasize again on how important this movie really was. It kickstarted a whole new genre of Soviet filmmaking for directors like Ilem Klimov or Tarkovsky to make movies. Without The Cranes Are Flying, we probably would never have seen Ivan's Childhood. And without that movie, perhaps we would have never seen Titanic. Anyway, thank you so much for watching, and if you liked it, remember to comment, like, subscribe, and follow my other videos. As always, all the best.